April member meeting. We have General Kale joining us today for speaking. I just want to do a couple quick announcements. The first one is we've finally released our application for college scholarships. So if you know anybody, the deadline is coming soon. Please get in contact with me. We'll distribute the scholarship application for you. We have continuing education certificates for this discussion. So afterwards, if you'd like to stop by and see me, we can get you one of those. We've called for board members. We're taking new board members for our upcoming elections. If you're interested, we'd love to have you. It's a great team here. We interact with lots of different types of people and different projects, etc. So please reach out to me ASAP. And we will do a few announcements of some of our existing board members at the end. But until then, I'd like to introduce Colonel Scott Matthews, and then we'll turn it over to General Kale.
Yes, Jen. Slautern host members and guests, good afternoon. It's my honor to introduce our distinguished guest speaker for today's luncheon, Brigadier General Bill B.K. Kale. After a 5 to 6 year Tommy Boy-like college experience, General Kale entered the Air Force as a distinguished graduate in 1995, the Reserve Officer Training Corps Detachment 720 at the Pennsylvania State University. Go Nittany Lions. But he's no stranger to U.S. Air Force's Europe or the European theater. He's commanded the squadron, group, and wing levels, and 2 of his commands were here in Europe. He commanded the fabled, sorry, sir, legendary was already taken, award-winning 52nd Civil Engineer Squadron at Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany, and the 501st Combat Support Wing Pathfinders at Royal Air Force Alconbury, United Kingdom. The general has also served on 3 headquarters staff to include his previous assignment at the Air Force as the Air Force's Director of Civil Engineering at Headquarters Air Force and as a legislative fellow. He's deployed in support of Operation Southern Watch, Joint Forge, Joint Guardian, Noble Eagle, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. And he's currently the commander of the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, headquarters at Joint Base San Antonio, Lackland, Texas, where he leads a 2,200 person organization responsible for providing responsive, flexible, full spectrum installation engineering services across the globe at 72 locations worldwide. He directly oversees execution of $3.4 billion annual operations budget, delivery of a $3 billion annual military construction program, and a $13 billion military housing portfolio. He's a certified professional management professional and licensed professional engineer. Please give a warm Kaiserslautern post welcome to the AFCEC commander and my friend, Brigadier General Bill Kale.
That was very polite. Tommy Boy was probably a little nicer than what he should have done. And I know I did not have a doctorate when I left. So, no, it's good to see everyone here today. I think I have an hour to talk, so my intent is to speak about 60 minutes and then leave the rest for you all for questions. Yeah, folks aren't trying. I'm trying really hard. Gotta get into European time here. It's one of the past 2 nights. We had great dinners here in Germany, and got to get my schnitzel fix. But come back home and I crash and I get some great sleep, and I wake up and I'm like, man, that was just like a wonderful 6 or 8 hours. And I look over the clock and it's like 2 in the morning, and it's it's only been like 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, you'll have to deal with me if I kind of sneak off here a little bit. Anyway, it's good to be here. So my intent today is I'm just gonna kind of talk a little bit about AFCEC and what we do. There's a lot of misnomers of what this organization is, set up to support the Air Force. I'll dive in a little bit in the core capabilities that AFCEC is focused on, kind of the work that we're doing, and then I'll also throw in there a little bit, kind of budget perspective and stuff like that that's going on. But and then as far as questions, I don't care you to ask me anything. Obviously, I've been in an AFCEC role here a little over 6 months. I just came from the Pentagon, so I've got a fairly up to date situation on what's going on budget wise and that sort of thing, Congress wise. Did spend some time on the Hill as the House liaison. So interesting perspectives there. I assume this is academic freedom, non-attribution, or no? Yeah. If anyone asks me if I, say something crazy, I'll just pretend like I never don't know what they're talking about.
First grade was live right now.
Yeah. Yes, I guess we got folks online there. So no, I just asked that if you attribute something to me here, just make sure it sounds good and it's somewhat truthful. But okay, so AFCEC. Yeah, a lot of people, that means a lot of different things. Obviously, I'm headquartered in San Antonio there in Kelly Annex. It's just like, this big office building. I jokingly say, if you read the comic strip Dilbert, just put that guy in a set of OCPs. There you go. That's AFCEC for you. Yeah, we're a very office-like sort of organization, but we have great reach across the world. So about, I don't know, just under 2/3 of our folks there are in Lackland. About a third of them are in Tyndall. But that being said, we have people all over the United States, a lot of different CONA sites. Most of that is environmental type workers that are out closer to where the regulators are and bases that they support. And then we have kind of an interesting relationship here in USAFE and in PACAP. Our quote unquote AFCEC storefronts are technically the detachments, or in the detachments. And those folks that work in there have AdCon through here in USAFE. It's Colonel Martin here that oversees them. But pretty much like all their, kind of authorities and OpCon and stuff like that sort of, flows through AFCEC. That being said, I really don't, we support them, we help them, but, Rick and his team pretty much do most of the work here in Europe for us, handle things, and it integrates in with us when we have to report things back up to DC, that sort of thing. So AFCEC's been, kind of going through a transformation in the past, 3 years or so. When General Allen came in, he was the first military commander there at AFCEC. We had a unique opportunity. We only had one general officer at the time for civil engineering, and then I was lucky enough to become a general officer. They had to kind of figure out a place for me to work. General Allen, he was like, "I'm out of DC. I'm getting the hell out of here," and went down to AFCEC to go run that. And he spent a lot of time trying to connect AFCEC better to the field and try and help focus what AFCEC is doing. And AFCEC is, as you heard, it's a fairly big organization. We have a lot of different directorates, but what was interesting is all the directorates, while they may be in charge of a certain type of program, for the most part, anything for that directorate to be successful, you had to have a cross-cutting team across all the directorates to enable them for success. So we kind of, yes, we have this organizational structure that's kind of like any other office that's pretty much functionally aligned, but we decided that we need more capabilities to really focus on what we're doing so we can deliver better to the field. And we basically have 7 core capabilities. My intent is to kind of go through those and explain those things to you and what we do and what the field does with respect to that. So first core capability, this one's a mouthful: integrated infrastructure investment requirements planning. And so this is, to me, I think this is one of the most important things that AFCEC does. We kind of we have the ability to take a step back and, really kind of lay out, hey, where do we want to go as an Air Force? How do we want to get after things? So we have the resourcing that we're able to kind of send out to the field to help the field to develop their plans. And, in particular, we've had a lot of different legislation pushed down on us by Congress in the planning environment. In particular, I think many of you have heard about, what happened at Tyndall and in Offutt, the natural disaster instance there, Hurricane Michael at Tyndall and the flooding at Offutt. Effectively, those weather incidents pretty much destroyed 2 bases. We had about a $6 billion program that we kind of rebuilt them. Well, Congress was very gracious and, kind of threw that money at us. But while they were doing that, they were, in the back there writing all sorts of new legislation and rules to ensure that, we're doing the right things in the future, that we don't have another Tyndall or an Offutt. And while I would say a lot of the things that they've done are good for our enterprise, we still have a lot of old infrastructure and a lot of infrastructure that's in some pretty challenging places. You look at like a Langley or Vandenberg on the coast, both those bases are very susceptible, to natural disaster. So some of the things, probably one of the biggest things that Congress has really pushed on us is developing climate resiliency plans. And we have, from an energy perspective, already kind of started that a little bit, but these are, more really taking an opportunity to, look at other things, depending on where you're at in the country or overseas, paying attention to those factors, making sure when you maintain facilities or build new facilities, you're doing the right things and spending the right kind of money, to get after types of work there. What I will say though is the word climate, especially in Washington, D.C., is a toxic word. About half the country thinks when you say the word climate, it's a good thing. We need to pay attention to it. We got to take care of it. It's a 21st century problem. We got to get after. Other half the country thinks you're crazy. Pissing money away. It's a whatever. It's a political thing. It's not something that we need to worry about. But as a military engineer, to me, what matters to me is the resiliency, the sustainability. Those things are things that we have to have in our installations, whether it's in peacetime or war. And that's what, we really need to be focusing on from a planning perspective. Make sure that we're getting after types of things. Also in our planning portfolio, it's kind of a gateway to get a lot of the money that our bases need to sustain themselves. On the FSRM side, pretty much the way things work, the Air Force gets $5 to $6 billion a year or so on FSRM, and that money initially, as it's coming down from air staff down to AFCEC, it keeps getting taxed off the top. But a lot of money initially pays for all the civilian workforce, so that goes to all the badge comps to pay them, and then it goes into AFIMSC. Then AFIMSC basically takes that pot of money. 60% of it just gets pushed out for the most part to the installations to run their day-to-day management. And then what's left, that 40%, then goes into the construction task order process. And I will say that we've done a lot of transformation over the past few years with respect to the CTO process. We got a lot of complaints from the field that it used to be very bureaucratic, a lot of data, wasn't very helpful. So I think the team has done a pretty good job at really skinning down the types of things that you need to submit to get that funding. But the biggest problem that we have now is we just don't have enough money. And I will tell you, in 24, it's going to look a lot more challenging than it did in 23 right now, unless we get some sort of huge fluff up from Congress. Right now, I have money that off the top will fund about 300 million or so for dorms and CDC work, about 150 million for demolition, and then pretty much the rest of the money is basically paying for projects that have already been submitted in mainly 23, but we do have some previous year stuff. We are going to have to do some work and really kind of scrub that list. It surprised me. We still have projects like FY18, I think, not correct, is that right, Eric? 18 that are still on the O&M list, where I'm just sort of scratching my head, like, we've already approved for this work to be done. It's, whatever, going on 4 years here, still haven't gotten across the line. I know every project has a story, but ones like that, they're going to die pretty quickly here because we just don't have time for that stuff, and we just need to move on. And basically, what the program's going to look like, you're going to get a year or two to get your project in. And you need to get after it, execute it, or you got to get back in line. We're not going to keep around a lot of the dead wood that we used to do. Now, I know over here in Europe and in the Pacific, we do have to make some special accommodations because there are host nation considerations, for those things, but we need to kind of lay that out up front and make sure we know what we're signing up for, and work with your team here to get after that. The other part, the planning team also helps out a lot with MilCon. We do have a fairly healthy MilCon program. If you compare it, to the past, we've actually been doing very well, getting a lot of money in MilCon, but one could argue we aren't necessarily getting it in the, the areas that we needed. We're definitely funding on the order of 75 to 90% of it's going all to the new mission, but about really, I would say it's probably close 10 to 20%, if we're lucky, is for current mission type stuff. So we are not replacing a lot of old buildings, and so really right now it's looking like, we got to keep stretching that FSRM dollars as much as we can to get after those facilities. We did finally make some headway this year, and we got a legislative proposal through OMB, and it's sitting up with Congress now to, kind of the quote unquote repair by replacement, being able to use O&M for that, but we'll see what happens. I don't know if they're hugely excited about it. It's kind of funny, like everyone is they're freaking out, like this is going to take tow away, or it's going to. In Congress, they're very, very particular about who owns what appropriation, and they're fearful that this is going to take away from the MilCon folks. And my argument back to them is none of these projects are actually even getting done or getting funded. This is all going to stay in the O&M lane. So what are you worried about? We'll see. We have to kind of go fight that fight. So that's kind of what we're looking at on the planning side. The next core capability, build infrastructure investment. That's probably the one that I think most folks are most familiar with what AFCEC does on that. And that's really, getting after managing the MilCon program. And what I'll tell you on the MilCon program, really kind of three main focuses that we have in the Air Force. Number one, we are recapitalizing our nuclear enterprise in a significant way. The first part of that is the Sentinel program. That is to quote the program manager from Nuke Weapons Center, it's a once in every other generation type program. Over $10 billion worth of MilCon. Just in simple terms, we're going to replace a silo every week for, I think, 9 years straight. I mean, it is insane. How much work that's going to get done on that. And we already started the program, working on test facilities and support facilities in Hill and Vandenberg. And then our first base that we're going to really get after is Epi Warren. It's going to go up to Malmstrom and over to Minot. So if you get finish up your tour here and want to do something pretty exciting, I think that program is going to be pretty neat to be involved with. We've got special MilCon authorities. Nothing like this. Congress hasn't approved anything like this in a while. We're able to use the same contractor that's actually building the weapon system. This is a very interesting program because it's very challenging to tell what's weapon system and what is infrastructure. I mean, they literally are kind of combined like that. And so it's I think in one sense it's really good that we're able to do that. We also have a lot of programmatic relief with Congress where we can kind of combine a lot of projects into a single 1391, almost at we can write 11391 for an installation and be able to manage a program that way, by having to, normally on a, each silo, which normally would have to do a 1391 for each. Just of in itself, that saves us probably about, let's see, 447 1391s that we would have to do. So that's a pretty big deal. There's a lot of other different nuances that we're working through. One thing that we're trying to do also, this is still in the works, something that we're working with Congress now, is we actually want to try and use cost plus contracts at the beginning of this program. And this is not something we normally do in MilCon. And I can understand the hesitancy of Congress of want to grant this authority to us, but I think it's really important, especially when we first start off the program. A lot of these facilities, we haven't done this work, I guess since it was the late 60s, early 70s. Was the last time that we did this type of stuff. And so when you're building in, you got an existing system, and then you're building in a new weapon system. I think the first few tranches of that, we need to have the ability to kind of take the risk away from the contractor, let the government own a little bit more of the risk, be able to work through a lot of the challenges that we have, and then basically reimburse the contractor for their costs. And then after that, then kind of go back to the fixed price model that we're using. So we're working through that. We'll see what happens. I think if we don't get this authority, what will happen is we'll have a very, very expensive start to this program, because that's pretty much how folks eliminate risk if you're not really sure what you're going to have to face. Let's see, anything else on GBSD? And I think that's about it. It's a very interesting program. We've created a special division in our CF directorate, on this, and that actually we've moved some engineers forward and put them in with the program office, the Hill, and then our next AFCEC is going to be in charge of this division. Is also Michelle Harwood. Next one, replacing Chris Coppel, doing that. The other leg of nuclear enterprise we're getting after is the B-21. This I'm sure most of you all saw the weapon system get unveiled at Edwards a few months ago. Engineers have the awesome opportunity to bed down that weapon system. We got a lot of work going on at Ellsworth right now to bring that system online there. And I don't think it's been officially released, but you can kind of figure out where the that's going to follow on, and it's some other bomber bases. Maybe I don't know, a place called Dias, and a place called what's the one there in Missouri? I always forget the name. So possibly there could be B-21s there. Who knows? Yeah. So in a lot of cases, Ellsworth, pretty much all new infrastructure. A place like Dias would be a lot of new infrastructure. But Whiteman and B2 there, a little bit more of being able to use existing infrastructure will save us a lot of money and opportunity. That's kind of the nuclear enterprise, Michelle, that we're getting after. The second kind of big priority is that we kind of focus on is AFCEC and support combat commanders. So a lot of you all are familiar with EDI, and in the Pacific, they quote unquote have PDI. They are very jealous of you all of what you got for EDI. I feel like you got a better deal than them, but hey, it is what it is. EDI program, a lot of challenges with that that we're working through. A good chunk of that program got tied up in the 2808 programmatics and funding the border wall. I think for the most part, we have kind of gotten that back on track. We still have some challenges with some country clearances and host nation agreements. But definitely hats off to you, safety, to work those things. It's the program's important to reassure our allies, and hopefully, it's it's kind of one of the ways that USAPI can actually get some decent milk on into the theater. I know you guys want more at your main bases. In PACAF, I mean, a lot of work going on there. It's hugely expensive, a lot more remote type sites out there, a lot heavier type, infrastructure that's having to go in. So we've had a lot of challenges there, but obviously there's a lot more focus on the Pacific now with what's going on with the PRC. On a side note, we are sending military engineers or extra military engineers into the Pacific Theater. Really looking hard at a lot of the old World War II infrastructure that we can, kind of upgrade fairly quickly. So, we have the ability to kind of spread out, create a lot more targets and see to have to kind of deal with. So it's, that's another theater where a lot of things are growing. Not as much emphasis and work going on in the Middle East and Southcom, but I will say Northcom, we have a lot of interesting programs going on. It's pretty amazing. You fly a couple balloons across the country and wow, like all sorts of milk on things. Don't get any crazy ideas, Scott, about, maybe a balloon over Europe or something that you'll get some milk on. But we have a lot of different programs that the airports are involved in to really help defend the homeland. Can't go in a lot of detail on those things, but I will say it's another significant investment that we're getting to handle. And then kind of the last, major focus is just bed down of weapon systems. We're kind of working through I won't say the last throes of the F-35 here at USAPI or at Lake and Heath, but it's, we still have a lot of F-35 bed downs that we're doing here in the future. A new thing that got put on our plate is we're actually helping out with bed downs for F-35s for foreign military sales and training at Ebbing Field. So that was one that kind of a little bit of a curveball, something different for us. Having to work through that. KC-46, another one that definitely a lot of different areas where we're bedding that aircraft down. So a lot of challenges of just new weapon systems coming in. We're trying to get rid of the old weapon systems, A-10s, Global Hawks, those sorts of things. And ultimately, new things are going to come behind them, or we're having to shift missions at those bases to get after those. The other part of build infrastructure investment that we handle, I already kind of mentioned the CTO process, but the vast majority, probably 75 to almost 90% of that money, we just send direct out to the bases. Bases execute that usually through the Corps of Engineers or NAFAC or through their own contracting offices. But AFCEC does have a small DA, CA capability that we use, and in particular, we've had great success on runway construction. Ascension Island, big project there. Well, I think it's one of the largest FSRN projects that we've done in the Air Force in a long time. Offutt runway, replaced that runway. That was a great project there. Literally, had all the Offutt aircraft move about an hour away to Lincoln Airfield, and they literally just ripped out the runway and built them a new one. Right now, we got Little Rock going on, another runway replacement there. The other thing we're trying to focus on with that DACA is dorm projects. And to me, it's the most important thing we take care of in our Air Force is our airmen, especially the younger ones, the new ones. And so we are really trying to get after new innovative ways to upgrade, deal with our dorms. We like to try and figure out how to use OTA authority to come up with some more novel ideas in there. So we've done a couple of industry events on that. So that's one area I'm pretty excited about to try and be a lot more innovative in that workspace. All right, how am I doing on time? I'm almost halfway done. I'm only about a quarter of the way through my speech, so my 60 minutes of talking here will come to fruition here. What I'll do is I'll just kind of reel the last enabling capabilities. A lot of them are I'll just hit the wave tops, and that way leave time for questions, even for you all. Next one, environmental compliance and restoration. Probably the biggest thing on my radar is it's a 4-letter word. Anyone guess what that is? Yeah, PFAS. Very, man. You guys sleep deprived or that's really quiet crowd. I gotta up my game on my jokes or something. Okay. But yeah, PFAS, biggest thing in the States. Obviously there's the lifetime health advisory, 40 parts per trillion. And now they just put out a draft maximum contaminant level of 4 parts per trillion, and that's going through, the whatever the rule making process with respect to that. It will be very interesting to see what happens over the next few years on that in the United States. I think it's going to become very there's going to be a lot of court battles, a lot of challenges in that. It'll be interesting to see if it stays at 4 or what happens. I mean, DoD and the Air Force has kind of been, unfortunately, the poster child on this. But what you're going to find is a lot of the local water municipalities that are having to deal with their own airport authorities that have contaminated them and other sources. They're going to come online when they see the bill, to be able to do these things. And the Air Force is, I think right now we've spent about $1.5 billion in our response to kind of deal with up to the 70 parts per trillion level, and to kind of our end game, our cost to complete is a little over $6 billion. If we stay at 70 parts per trillion, but we go down to the 4 parts per trillion MCL, I suspect we're at a minimum going to double our cost to complete. It'll probably be in the neighborhood of, I would say, $12 to $15 billion when we're all said and done cleaning up. And then when the MCL becomes real, we're probably going to spend anywhere from hundreds of millions to $1 billion, in the short term, and having to provide bottled water and different types of cleanup systems to kind of handle the communities. Overseas, obviously, you have different guidelines and guidance. OSD will really kind of drive what's going on. So, as far as folks here in the room that kind of deal with this sort of thing, really, we have to follow OSD's lead, and we'll work through that. What's interesting in the States is it's right now, PFAS is just an LHA and it's not enforceable. So we're kind of in this weird gray space where you're getting yelled at by our Congress, and there's all sorts of folks out in the community that are pretty peeved about this, but the laws haven't really have changed. So there's only so much that we can do. When we actually get a MCL and that gets put into place and it's actually enforceable, I think it'll be interesting to see how things or the dynamics change. Energy assurance, another core capability. One big thing that AFCEC does, we go out to each installation, we do an installation energy plan. Not only do we look at the electricity, but also look at the water, and really kind of developing situations or solutions to come up with creative ways to improve resilience at installations. To me, the sustainable energy is the most type of resilient energy that we can have. We need to get off of fossil fuels, not because it's a clean thing, but it's more of a military imperative to kind of cut out supply chain and logistics and really have a lot more control of our own destiny, of our own power sources on our installations. On our IAPs, we stepped on the gas partly because Congress told us to, but also because of the situation here in the Ukraine. So we really kind of moved forward on all the European ones. I think a lot of the team was out here this past fall, and most of the IAPs are going to get wrapped up here, come this summer and next fall, and then they come out every year after that to kind of get after that. So big program there. Real property, real estate, another core capability that AFCEC kind of oversees. Another 4-letter word here. I think someone already mentioned it. FIRE. That we're dealing with. I will tell you, the Undersecretary of the Air Force I won't say she has me on speed dial, but I think I'm either like that little voodoo doll that she stabbed in her office, or she's got my picture in her dartboard. But they're laser focused on this, trying to get our real property books ready. They just makes them scratch their head, like how we can't find buildings and why we can't add up all our utility lines and, you know, blah, 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 all the things that sound very simple on general terms, but to basically get our real property books where they need to be. They want us to go faster, and this auditability for DoD has been a real big thing. You know, over the last, I guess, 10 years or so, you know, Congress is very frustrated with DoD that, you know, we can't audit our books. That being said, we're not a private business. And unfortunately, right now, a lot of things that are sort of trying to get jammed down our throats don't really apply very well to government work. So we are, fortunately, we have a great advocate, Mr. Shiba, Mr. Fry, up in the air staff, kind of pushing back a little bit and keeping us within reality. I got 2 more left here, and I'll open up to questions. Another thing we're trying to do is civil engineer enterprise health assessments. This is kind of a nascent capability that, you know, we're just started. Y'all are probably pretty familiar with the Red Hill incident that happened in the Pacific. It's an unfortunate fuel leak there that contaminated the water source there in Hawaii. So the secretary asked me, you know, hey, is the Air Force going to have a Red Hill? Where will it happen if it does happen? And we really didn't have a good feeling of where that will be. And we couldn't, from the headquarters level, be able to, you know, provide perspective on that. And I think what a lot of folks will see, you know, one thing that's kind of come out from that is we have a requirement now to make sure that we're in compliance with all our tank inspections and generator maintenance. Unfortunately, from an enterprise perspective, does not look very good. And I think more of it is probably just record keeping and getting things into our databases. But we just kind of had our first look, and we definitely want some feedback from the field of, you know, what challenges do you have. But come August, we're going to be in compliance, or there's I think there will be some a lot more leadership engagement on that. I think it's probably a nice way to say it. The other thing with like CE Enterprise health assessment, we're trying to look hard at is like preventative maintenance. Not only if you're doing it, but if it's effective or not. And what we're trying to do is create tools for the field that they can use, the ops chief or the commander, and get a good feeling of what they should be accomplishing on a daily, a weekly, a monthly, an annual basis. And so we have all sorts of data that we track. And what we're trying to do is not create more workload on the field. We're trying to use the data that they have, and then you know, the systems that that are able to take all that data and produce it on a dashboard that will help you manage your organization. Last one, integrated base recovery, or responsive recovery. This is, I think, to me, why folks wear this uniform. It's hugely important that our engineers are prepared from when we have to act, whether it's incidents that are caused by a natural disaster or cyber type issues, but more importantly, you know, kinetic conflict. And our engineers need to, you know, one, be able to spread out away from bases and be able to set up FOBs and be prepared for war, but then more importantly, be able to come back to a mob, recover it, and produce combat effects and get firepower back onto the enemy quickly. The IVRR area, a lot of work going on, a lot of R&D going on, a lot of different initiatives happening, whether it's for U safety or PACAF. We cannot do enough, and we can't do it fast enough. So I will kind of wrap up there and open it up for Q&A from you all, what you got. So fire away.
So, yeah, I'm Jeff French, work for Film Management from Platt at AFIMSC. So I think I asked you this question during my second deployment. I was in Jordan 2 years ago, so over 21. Where do you see our FSRM budget now on 23, 24, 25? I remember you mentioned 23 had a little dip, but now 2.5 years later, where do you see the next 3 years? And I guess my second question to that how we've been doing based on historical records on our metrics. If we can get more money on the resourcing piece, and I get the OSD guidance and all the NDS stuff that drives that. Where do you see, if we can get more money, how could we reallocate that funds for our sustainment dollars and our build dollars with other like research and development? And how are we doing selling that to the operator community and OSD and Congress? What appetite on?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you to stop. Question 20 there. Let me, you can ask more afterwards there. So FSRM, I mean, the first thing I'll say is we've gotten more money than we have in the past. And I'll tell you the I2S from that perspective was successful in, getting us more resources. However, the I2S has kind of said, hey, we have a floor of 2%, but ideally we're shooting for 2.3%. We are not meeting that mark now, and the major reason why we're not meeting that mark is because we found 6 or 7 bases worth of PRV that we've just added in, and so it's kind of watered down the extra money that we've gotten. We're hovering around the 1.5 to 1.7% range in there. But I will say I2S is successful because I hear the programmers talking about it. They are trying to shoot for it when they're programming. Congress talks about it too. We have been in 23. It was looking not that great, but we did get an extra 300 or 400 million from Congress in FSRM. One of the main reasons why I say 24 is going to be a little painful for FSRM. One, they did have to pay some bills, and a lot of that kind of went to the OIs and into the Pacific. That being said, we're still, a lot of that money is going into civil engineering type things. It's paying for really a lot of the bases or the places without bases installations of what I was talking about, trying to refurb a lot of World War II infrastructure that we can reuse, and all sorts of gear and kits for our engineers. But in general, I think we have not done a very good job of consolidating and demolishing our bad infrastructure. I think the I2S had very meager and weak goals. It was just kind of like a 5% over 20 years or something like that, and that's not gonna solve our problem or help us in any sort of way. What's challenging, and Scott will probably get a kick out of this. I don't know who the commander was at Spangdahlem at the time, but we built all these new buildings. We built a new commissary, a new BX, a new gym, a new CDC, and I think the number one reason we built them is because the old ones were undersized and could not be repaired or replaced. Absolutely horrible facilities, and yet we still are using them. And we built all the new stuff, and all that old stuff is still there. The stuff that was so bad that you couldn't use anymore. And it's things like that that we aren't helping ourselves in that sense. That being said, there's a lot of reasons why they kept a lot of those things. And in some cases, they're able to throw a little bit of money at those facilities, and they're doing the right thing at the right time. But when you look big picture, that is the type of stuff that is not helping us get our installations where they need to be. Another thing that one thing that just visiting Spangdahlem that we need to do, we're going to really look hard at how we categorize facilities and how we allocate space. One area where we're severely lacking is operational contingency space. So like Spangdahlem in particular, it's got a lot of space where you can fly in a squadron. It does not make sense to demolish, some of the squad op buildings and some of the maintenance facilities there, because we know we're going to use those facilities. But we only really need, it's almost like a Fairford model. You just, when the iron comes in, you turn on the lights and you get those facilities working. And they use them for a few weeks, few months. And then when they leave, you shut them back down. And I don't want to say that, maybe on those, we only, plan for 1% spending, where we take that money and shift it over to other facilities, but we have to find ways to account for those things. And the other thing, I think the CE enterprise health assessment, I think we need to do a better job with the effectiveness of our preventative maintenance. We are creating a lot of projects because we aren't doing the right things. I mean, we could replace a pump instead of an HVAC system. If we fix that HVAC system, before it starts leaking, we save ourselves a lot of time and we don't have all the mold and mildew. So those are things that I think if we can kind of get better at that, I think that's important. As the future, 24 is kind of a blip right now. 25, 26 look a little better. I think the Congress knows that we need a good chunk of FSRM to keep our facilities. I am hopeful that we'll get some help in 24 from the Congress on FSRM. But one thing that is concerning to me is we are now starting to see, you can't call them earmarks, but they certainly look like them, starting to float into the FSRM world. And we're going to have to figure out how to deal with that as a service. Because we've been very fortunate that we've been able to spread that money out to the installations. But now when Congress starts line iteming, hey, double-digit million is going to go to this base, and when they only technically earn single-digit million, that really is throwing a wrench into the process. And so I think there's going to be some losers that we're going to have to deal with, and that's something as an Air Force we're figuring out how we're going to get after that. Back when money used to flow through the MAJCOMs, I think there's a lot more self-discipline and ability to kind of manage that. But now as an enterprise, it's a lot harder to do so. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, in general, I try to be hopeful on those things, but I ask that the field really try to do the things that they can to kind of help ourselves. I think we talk a big game at the enterprise level, but at the operational level, we don't necessarily follow, what the enterprise is trying to do. We're more focused on our tactical needs. While those are important, we're gonna bankrupt ourselves in this portfolio if we don't get better at what we do. All right, I get at your question, or your first 10 questions there. Who else got a question? Go ahead. You look familiar, man. We know each other?
Yeah, we have a question based on Space Force and being a new force and transitioning over. How has that impacted the engineering world in the Air Force? Are some of those assets going to move over to Space Force and they're going to carve out an engineer unit to take care of their equipment, facilities, buildings? Or has that impacted you at all in your position?
It's impacted me, and we've definitely had a lot of, how would you say, worked through the transition of creating Space Force. So I will say in general, there hasn't been a huge amount of change for civil engineers. I'll start probably number one. Probably the biggest thing is civil engineer squadrons are still civil engineer squadrons. We have not changed that construct at all. And the Air Force owns that organization, and we drive how that organization is set up. The biggest change is they no longer report to an MSG or a wing. They report to a space-based delta, or I forget what they call it. I guess a space deltas at the ranges. There's kind of two models. So you have like Vandenberg and Patrick are kind of the range model, and then all the other bases really in Colorado are sort of a space-based delta. And so that commander of that space-based delta is a space operator. So they are not, most likely they are not versed in infrastructure at all. They do have an MSG-like vice working for them. That's sort of how that is set up. I've gone and visited them. For the most part, I think it's working fairly well. I mean, the Space Force, they wanted to be in charge of their installation. I totally get that. They also want their operational folks focused on operations, or installation folks focused on the installation things. So the one thing that's difference is, that leadership for that base is technically, at like the NAF level, either the SPOC, the Space Operations Command, or SSC, the Space Systems Command. From what I've seen, it's, there really isn't any organizational challenges at the installation level. There might be personal, hey, Johnny doesn't like Janie or whatever, between leadership, how that happens, but I have not seen any organizational problems. AFCEC does the same exact thing AFCEC did before, for Air Force and Space Force, but the biggest difference is that Space Force makes their prioritizations and Space Force decides their resourcing. I will say on the FSRM side, Space Force is well over 2%, and they are putting a lot of emphasis on facilities. Milcon, they're a little bit more handcuffed. They have about 60 million a year in TOA. That was actually one appropriation we did not change over, and I think that's a good thing. That was one of the last things that Mr. Carl did when he left, was make sure that we don't change that. And the main reason why it's a good thing is if Space Force has a problem with the Milcon, or if it's like a little bit over $60 million or something, by being linked with the Air Force account, we can kind of move money over them to help them out. And then obviously we take it back twofold on the backside. No, just kidding. No, but we're able to kind of reimburse, so it's, the project's able to kind of move smoothly and not get caught up. So yeah, for the most part, that's kind of how Space Force is working. It'll be interesting to see, I don't know, the next 5-10 years as they work through things of, how they want to change and if they want to own this capability. Right now, all the airmen in the Space Force formations, and in particular civil engineers, they're still expected to deploy. They are allowed to leave a small amount of quote unquote deployed in place, but I mean that's the same as like a ACC base. You only keep the ones that keep your mission going. But we got to deploy them; they're out, out the door. But we need to make sure that what we do to the space bases is what we do to the Air Force bases. We're very it's like having kids. In the sense of you're trying to be fair. If Johnny got 2 Christmas presents, Jeannie better get 2, or they're going to argue and fight. So we're very mindful of that. One thing I could see, maybe in 10 years is, I don't know, maybe we pull the military out of those civil engineer squadrons and make them all civilian squadrons, and something along those lines. We've talked about it a little bit, but haven't done anything to take action on that. But the good thing is that we know it works. It can work. We do it at other bases. We also do it via contract too, via boss. So there's a lot of options there. But right now, they kind of like the way it is, like having the military there, and that's pretty good. So yeah, in general, I think for the most part, I think the changes that I kind of mentioned to you is how it looks. Are you hearing something different, or?
No, I just know we, the air operations in the way I work at, we do have the Space Force, and they wanted their space, but it's kind of, difficult sometimes when we just don't have the space. It's just kind of competing against what requirements are. So,
They're standing up a space debt here.
Yeah.
You may see Space Force folks in our building because they took over the third floor of building 509 where they were, and I can see that force is, working on a project across the street with the eventual having actually a 1-star building Space Force here at Einstein. So they're definitely present and looking for space.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard they've got a house designated for them already, and if someone does this, you just loot them back. I mean, it's really easy. But yeah, no, PACAF just set up one, and it's CENTAT or AFCENT's got one. I mean, those things are, they're going to grow, but for the most part, those will be kind of, sort of like operational. I mean, it's almost like a tenant, it's coming on your base. They do have a different type of O&M. I think it's with a 3410 or something, for their facilities. That's something that we probably need to be mindful of, or, watch out if we're doing work for them. We should be using that sort of money. other than that, yeah, they're definitely growing, and it's interesting future. Other questions you all have? Okay, I guess you're allowed 10, so you're down to 8 now.
I used to be a functional manager. The health of the schoolhouse, you said preventive maintenance is always a challenge, making sure that our technicians take care of the infrastructure. What is the health of all the schoolhouses that we pump the money into, making sure that courses are updated, available to what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, my feedback loop on, I mean, I have a couple of pieces, but the main one I get is from the wing commander there at Shepherd, General Giroux. We by far are the most engaged, functional, and do the more for our AFSC than any other functional. And he's very appreciative of that. I know in my last job, I made an effort to, really get into the schoolhouses and visit them and make sure they had the resources they need. Probably the biggest thing that I was able to do is actually get, the instructors, the ability to get into next gen. And what I had found out going through that they were just showing PowerPoint slides because no one could get access to it, which it's not a great way to learn how to use next gen. And unfortunately, the one that we haven't been able to crack is to be able to give accounts to all the students for next gen or security issues and that sort of thing. But the instructors assure me that, they're able to get the airmen appropriate stick time, with that system. We created, I guess, like a sandbox that folks are going to use to get after that. In general, I think we do a fairly decent job making sure AATC is sustaining the things that we've put into the schoolhouse. I'm sure there's like an issue here or there, but nothing's come up to my level. And our chiefs are very engaged from MAPCAC and then Chief Collison up at air staff. I mean, there's always someone going to one of the schoolhouses and finding out, what we need to improve or get better. If you have any feedback or, things that you've heard that we need to look at or change, that's actually how I find out. That's how I found out about the next gen thing, is I heard it from some airmen at a random base. And I actually then went to the schoolhouse and I'm like, is this true? And they're like, yeah, we need to fix this. So yeah, if anyone has feedback on it, I'd love to hear it because that's how we fix things. All right.
Yeah, Chandler Ogden with Jacobs. I have a question. You mentioned the AFCEC support for the FMS program, specifically KC-46. We happen to be working on one of those, and I was just curious what AFCEC's role is on supporting FMS cases. Is that infrastructure or weapon system or a little bit of both?
I'll tell you, we're just like, what happened at Ebbing Field was, I won't say a blind spot or a scene, but we weren't expecting to have to work there or do anything. It's a guard base with an FMS mission, and active duty is actually executing the work. So I will say our eyes are open and working in particular with was it AFCEC and AATC-IA and HAF-IA, and there's another organization. I can't even think of the name of them, but I mean, we're not trying to get into the FMS construction business overseas. I think that's fairly well solidified. I think it's AFCEC. It's got the engineers that oversees and manages that. The scene that we have is in America, the way it normally has worked, and I'll use the Luke Air Force Base as an example. So we have F-16s that used to be the F-16 schoolhouse, and then we would bed down, other countries to do F-16 training. And basically the FMS case would pay for the construction project to put that there, and really the civil engineer squadron and the MSG would figure out how to make it happen for the installation, and you have all the support services around it. What happened at Ebbing Field is well, the civil engineer squadron really isn't there. It's like one dude, because it's a guard base, and they don't have folks to oversee and manage that work, and so that's how we got involved on this one. There are some other cases that we're starting to. If this is going to become more of a thing, I think we're going to be dealing with. I know we have specifically Anderson FMS case that we're sort of involved more so on the environmental side and doing all the kind of NEPA work for it. But yeah, we're still kind of, this is sort of a new thing that we're getting more involved in, and we're working with SAFI on the basing process. So when these things are coming through, one of the questions they're asking, are you doing construction? Where are you doing it, and who's executing for it, and how is it getting paid for? And we're deciding that stuff, we're figuring that out in the basing process so that we can get involved sooner. The other area where we normally when you do a weapon system bed down, we either got the FSRM process or MILCOM process. So we have ways to see that work coming in and getting a feel for how much it's going to cost and getting a budget. And there's a discipline with respect to that. Well, we didn't have that for Ebbingfield, and so yes, that was a challenge there. And then the the FMS portion of it, there's each case is different, and each country is different. How they work it is different, and what we we're working with AETCIA, and if they want us to oversee that construction and that sort of thing, they need to come to us early and work through the estimates and get good numbers, because a lot of times they were not, and just to sort of put it into perspective, they wanted to do their JSF bed down at Ebbingfield. I think it was $27 million. I'm like, what the hell are you going to buy with $27 million? Like, I'm at 35 million. And yeah, so that's kind of what we've been doing on that. I don't know, is that answering your question? Or?
Yeah, it does. We're on the construction side in Israel doing KC-46, and I was just curious if there was a role. Obviously we're working through facility requirements documents that comes back through the SPO for the aircraft, and some of that I just didn't know if there was a role that was specific towards an aspect of the infrastructure, an aspect of best practice for a particular airframe or system.
No, best practice stuff, I would say that's more informal, the AFCEC team working back with the SPO and, indirectly getting information from us on it, but there's no formal, process on that per se. And AFCEC is not getting into, unless there's some specific need or requirement, we don't have a plan, or we aren't envisioning doing the overseas work for that.
Okay, thank you.
Who else got a question?
Question, but it's also 1 o'clock. So I just,
Okay, all right.
real quick.
Oh, you'll have the last question.
It's so feel free to shorten this if you need to, but I just wanted to ask about meal conferences.
Mhm.
So in general, I think we've made great steps, and my question for you is what items or what areas are you working on in order to better facilitate easier construction overseas? And I can give you one example of something that has happened that was great. I've been here a long time. It previously was very difficult to line up MILCON execution timelines with our fiscal law regulations and programming. And something we did for communication, everybody, negotiation partners, our program engineering, execution agent, stakeholders, is to say, let's start looking at the timeline a little differently, programming one differently. That has helped tremendously in order to be able to meet host nation timelines, their processes, and also meet our fiscal regulations. So it's something that I've seen improve significantly over the last 3 years. Is there any other things that your team's working on, or that you flagged as a big, hey, we need to fix this? I know that we've communicated a lot between teams, but is there something on your plate or your eyes?
Yeah, well, I'll say, like, when I started in my last job, one area I'm kind of comfortable in is, the built infrastructure investment. It's something I've done throughout my career. So I immediately went to MILCON to see, how we're doing. And I think it was like FY20. FY20. Not a single project was awarded in FY20 during the year of appropriation.
Yeah.
So I think that's almost a fact. There's probably, there may be one or got awarded. And I was just like utterly stunned. And then I looked, I was like, oh my gosh, how does 19 look? And 19 was like, I don't know, maybe we had half the program awarded in 19. And I was like, oh my, I don't even want to look at 18. And I mean, we had stuff going back to 12 that wasn't even finished or off the books. And, you know, just from my days, I don't know if many of you remember Brigadier General Pat Burns and his, you know, the red zone. And I mean, he would like sew a scarlet letter on a commander if you didn't get your project awarded in the year of appropriation, or if you know, weren't done with the project, you know, in the construction completion phase. It's like, it was really a big deal. And so with General Allen and I, we saw that we had lost our ways. We did not have discipline in the program. And so it's been a multi-year effort to create that discipline. And I will say now we're in a much better place. You know, obviously we got slapped pretty hard in 21. We lost almost $1 billion worth of TOA because we weren't design ready, or 35% behind by the OSD deadline. And so the comptroller just took that money. Fortunately, they just kind of pushed it farther out into the FIDA, but it was a painful cut. And so really the big thing that, you know, we got a project in the FIDA. We've got our P&D funds a lot more healthy, and we're spending that money, and we're getting projects 35% design before they go into the budget and over to the Hill. So that's one, I think, piece that we're doing in there that's really helping out things a lot. As we're doing all this, we had this huge inflation spike, and that didn't really necessarily help us out at all. But the thing I take solace in is a lot of our project growth between 15 and 20 was because of user requirement changes. And we have definitely kind of got our arms around that piece. And it's the things that we can't control are causing that delta. And then the next thing is we have a 90% goal of getting projects awarded in the year of appropriation. And to me, that is huge too. Because if you really look at the data, the projects that have the most problems and the ones that fail, the ones that don't get awarded in either the year of appropriation or the next year, it's the ones that are, you know, FY +2 and beyond. And those ones just, I mean, they've just kind of lost their way and things go awry. The reason why it's only 90% goal is mainly because of the overseas program. You know, our timelines don't just line up perfectly, especially the one in the UK. That one is, man, they've got bureaucracy down to pretty good there. But it's, you know, that's why it's not 100. I would love to have everything awarded in the year of appropriation, but it's just not possible. We get a lot of pressure from OSD, especially on the host nation agreements and on a lot of the projects in Eastern Europe. They're just like, you're not going to award a project until you have a host nation agreement now. Playing that game. Another thing. So, and then the last piece is really it's the MADCOM communicating, you know, to AFCEC and trying to explain, you know, if there's any sort of special circumstances, and trying to, you know, work those things into the program. And we have the same thing with PACAF. I think it's, you know, USAFE does have its challenges with all sorts of different countries here. But I'll say PACAF is probably an order worse than what you guys deal with over here. And there's a little more instability with governments over there. And I mean, we'll have an agreement with, what is it, Timor or whatever. That's a project we had. We had all our permits, everything was great. Their government changed, you know, we're back to square one. You're just like, you know, we can't do that with our MILCOM program. So those are the types of things that, you know, that we're trying to get after. We're definitely doing a lot of data analysis, you know, really trying to pay attention to, you know, where are we, why are projects coming in a lot higher than what we planned or programmed for. And it's you know, it's really interesting that the types, there's certain projects that, you know, we just do a very good job on, and the data shows that, and got that. But, you know, it seems like a lot of our operationally unique facilities, surprise, surprise, like those ones, we're all over the place. We're either like we way overpriced or way underpriced on those projects. We can't get into the the sweet spot to keep the program a little easier to manage. Does that answer your question, or is there any other specific things that we can do differently or better
Oh,
from the Air Force perspective?
I think we can all have partnership. It's just communicating. I think it's the best. It's make progress in this area because everybody has a little bit different piece of information and to enter the process. Continually make ground. I think it's the only way we're going to move forward in a very slow, bureaucratic area. Well, on all sides. Yeah, thanks for addressing that.
And one other thing I would say too on that is we spent a lot of time over the past 2 years, working with congressional staffers on the P&D and getting us more money in there and kind of allowing us a little more flexibility. There are a lot of staffers that are like, your P&D money, you should have that planned to the penny and you spend it out in the year of appropriation. While it's nice to get a lot of that money spent out fairly quickly, I think it's good to have some flexibility in the neighborhood of probably 10 to 20% of the program for things that might pop in or things that we want to kind of get after later. I also think, we have to have some room for error. There'll be some projects that, we'll design that maybe we probably shouldn't design because whatever the requirement goes away and there's no need to do the construction. So there's a little bit of a waste in there. But the other thing too, there's a lot more complexity in some of the projects we're doing, and waiting to like the year before that you're putting it in the budget to start design is not a recipe for success. So trying to identify that too, sometimes maybe even 3 years out, making sure we have enough money in that P&D account to start projects for that. And the last thing is we really want to try to avoid incrementally funding our designs because that tends to drag things out and we don't use that money as wisely. So I think a lot of good initiatives that have happened over the past few years for this program, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how things look in a couple of years from now. But I had my team look at kind of like 15 to 20 and then 21 to 23, and it's almost like night and day of how the Air Force is now executing its MOCON. Or actually compared to the other services doing quite well in there, whereas before, I remember my first hearing of General Kale, why have you not spent over $6 billion that we've given to you over the past 5 years on your construction? What's your problem? What can't you execute stuff? And it wasn't a lot of fun being a congressional chief boy for that. So, all right. Well, I think my time's up. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. I tried to put you to sleep and talk the whole time so that you wouldn't ask me any questions. That was good discussion. And if there's anything else that you're curious about or want to know, feel free to bring me a note or my exec a note in there. I'd love continuing on the dialogue, or you got Colonel Matthews or Colonel Martin over here to bring stuff back to, and really AFCEC is all about trying to help out the installations and make our airmen engineers successful out in the field. And anything that you all can do to help us out with that is much appreciated. It was great talking with you all. I wish you all the best, and thanks a lot.
Good point on behalf of our hosts, and this is to help you tomorrow morning.
My meeting this afternoon.
Yes.
I got a very boring briefing this afternoon. Hey Scott, how you doing?
I've got a question in 5 months.
Sir, you probably have 2 years. Yeah, sure. Yeah.